Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. Today, we have a long lecture. I don't know if I'm going to have enough time in the 40 minutes of free Zoom that I still get, but I'll try and go through these as fast as I can, impart my knowledge where some things are missing, but it is what it is. So it's a long one, so let's get started. It'd help if I had the window open. Noob. Share. All right, so similarly to like World War One unit, what was that, chapter 9? It went World War One begins and then World War One as the next lecture. So yeah, World War Two begins was the last lecture. So it's just plain old World War Two with this lecture, chapter 2, chapter 12, lesson 2. That was your warm-up. And only one objective: identify major events in the war. Pretty simple, because there's a lot. Oh my god. Like, I know it, this has to hurt your eyes. It hurts mine. All right, big ego. So Hitler stunned Europe with the speed and efficiency of the German attack on Poland. Hitler's blitzkrieg, or lightning war, used armored columns called panzer divisions, supported by airplanes, and each panzer division was a strike force of about 300 tanks with accompanying forces and supplies. Gotta know blitzkrieg for your test. The forces of the blitzkrieg broke quickly through Polish lines and encircled the bewildered Polish troops. Regular infantry then moved in to hold the newly conquered territory, and within 4 weeks, Poland had surrendered. Remember, the invasion started September 1st. September 28th, 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union divided Poland. After a winter of waiting, it was actually called, after the Blitzkrieg, it was actually called a Sitzkrieg, because wintertime, no one was fighting, no one wanted to waste any ammo, all that. Hitler will resume an attack on April 9th, 1940, with another blitzkrieg against Denmark and Norway. If you don't know, Denmark is to the north of Germany. 1 month later, Germany will launch another attack on Netherlands, Belgium, and France. The main assault was through Luxembourg and the Ardennes Forest, as the German panzer divisions broke through weak French defensive positions there and raced across northern France. French and British forces were taken by surprise. They were anticipating a German attack on the border with Germany and France called the Maginot Line. So, of course, that was heavily fortified and defended and built up. And Hitler saw the weakness and hit them in their weak spot. So France wasn't able to recover as quick. The Maginot Line included a series of concrete and steel fortifications with heavy artillery. Germans again decided not to cross there. Instead, they went through and attacked around France from the border in Belgium. So again, like I said in the first lecture, lots of pictures. So September 1st, you have the Germans attacking. And then September 17th, here's a blitzkrieg, panzer division. Here's I Googled Sitzkrieg, and here are the guys having fun. Here's the attack on Denmark and Norway. Finland went to the Soviets. Here you have that invasion pictures. And then Western Europe, Netherlands, Belgium, So this is where the Maginot Line is, right here. This is the Maginot Line. This area is the Maginot Line, and they went through there, the forest. The forests. Um, more tanks. Destruction. German invasion of the Low Countries again. So Maginot Line right here. Look, it says Maginot Line. And their main attack came through here. The Ardennes forces through Luxembourg. This is Luxembourg right through here. There's a picture of the Maginot Line. All right, miracles. So by avoiding the Maginot Line, the Germans split the Allied armies, trapping French troops and the entire British army on the beaches of Dunkirk. Only heroic efforts of the Royal Navy and civilians in private boats did the British manage to evacuate 338,000 troops, mostly British, from the beaches of Dunkirk, called the Miracle at Dunkirk. The French will sign an armistice June 22nd, 1940, in the same car that, Hitler doesn't forget. So he made French officials surrender in the same train car that the Germans took to Versailles. Something like that, where it's like, neener, neener, I'm going to make you surrender. And so now the Germans occupied 3/5 of France. An authoritarian regime under German control was set up at the remainder of the country. It was known as Vichy France. It was led by an aged French hero from World War I, Marshal Henri Pétain. And he was like their puppet. Put a French guy in charge, but don't let them, do French things. So now Germany was in control of Western and Central Europe, but Britain had not yet been defeated. In fact, after Dunkirk, the British resolve heightened, especially in the helpful in rallying the British people, were the stirring speeches of Winston Churchill, who became prime minister in May 1940. President FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, denounced the aggressors, but domestic distractions such as the Great Depression helped direct the U.S.'s strict policy of isolationism. A series of neutrality acts passed in the 30s prevented the U.S. from taking sides or becoming involved in European wars. Many Americans believed the U.S. was drawn into World War I due to economic involvement in Europe and wanted to prevent such a recurrence. FDR was convinced that neutrality acts actually encouraged Axis aggression, and they were gradually relaxed as the U.S. supplied food, ships, planes, and weapons to Britain. Yeah, so in 19, I think the first neutrality act was in 1935, and then again in 1937, and I want to say again in 1939. There were like 3 different neutrality acts, and FDR is like, well, we got to help out our democratic allies in Western Europe, and so instead of getting involved without getting involved, FDR is going to pass something called the Lend-Lease Act because America hadn't been hit yet. So, hey, here you go. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Dunkirk, but I think this is a poster from it. We surround you. And then you have some people on a boat. These are people waiting on the boat. I don't know if these are dead bodies. I think they're just people, but this is a short trip from Dover to Dunkirk. Dover to Calais is usually the typical spot. And we'll talk about that much later. But yeah, it's a short trip. But the Winston Churchill, the British government, they're going to call on people who have boats to go help bring the British soldiers back. And when you're like sitting ducks out there. And so the German airplanes would come and try and, fire at them, just waiting on the beaches. And if you've ever seen this movie, there you go. Again, Dunkirk evacuation. What did it take about May 26th to June 4th? One day, 26,000 troops were rescued. It's crazy. This is very pixelated, but it says, "How far can we go? It's not our war." And someone's saying, "It's our war." And this is Uncle Sam giving planes age short of war. Help Britain defend America. Don't let the Nazis step on America. All right. Thought I was going to sneeze. All right, bombs over Britain. So Hitler realized that an amphibious invasion, land to sea, of Britain could only succeed if Germany gained control of the air. So in August 1940, the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, launched a major offensive, Operation Sea Lion. German planes bombed British air and naval bases, harbors, communications, and war industries. But the British fought back with determination. They were supported by an effective radar system and gave them early warning of German attacks. Nevertheless, Britain suffered critical losses. September, though, retaliation for the British attack on Berlin, they bombed Berlin. Hitler ordered a shift in his strategy. Instead of bombing military targets, the Luftwaffe began massive bombings of British cities. And this is called the Blitz. It is different from the blitzkrieg. The Blitz is the bombings over British cities. Hitler had hoped to break British morale. Instead, because military targets weren't being hit, the British were actually able to rebuild their air strength, build planes, communication systems, all that jazz. Soon, the Royal Air Force, the RAF, inflicted major losses on the Luftwaffe bombers and caused Hitler to postpone the invasion of Britain indefinitely. And that's where Winston Churchill gives a famous speech. "We'll fight them in the field. We'll fight them in the... We will never surrender." There's a German plane, as you can tell by the Nazi symbol. There's the RAF plane. A little similar but different. This is, in theory, Operation Sea Lion. In theory. But when you attack Germany and Berlin, well, all these numbers are numbers of bombs over these cities. So London was bombed 14,849 times, while Plymouth was bombed 1,139. Southampton, 3,334. Liverpool, 904. Never surrender. Here's some destruction. Again, World War II has a lot of pictures. As you can see, that's London. London Bridge is falling down, falling down. If you've ever seen this, back when chive used to be a thing, keep calm and chive on. This symbol comes from the time of the British King and Queen and the government during World War II, where the bombings of these cities in Britain, they would sound alarms when the attacks were coming, and they would go into bomb shelters. And then afterwards, amidst the destruction, they would carry on like nothing ever happened. Well, not nothing ever happened, but like, they'd carry on with their lives and not let it distract them. Talk about resiliency. So here's the king and the queen. I think this is Queen Elizabeth's mother. Yeah. Anyway, RIP to the queen. Winter is coming. Although he had no desire for a two-front war, Hitler was convinced that Britain was remaining in the war only because it expected Soviet support. The USSR were smashed. Britain's last hope would be eliminated. Plus, Hitler convinced himself that the Soviet Union had a pitiful army and could be defeated quickly. So, Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union was scheduled for the spring of 1941, but the attack was delayed due to problems in the Balkans. Oh, those Balkans. Hitler had already gained the political cooperation of Hungary, Bulgaria, and Romania, but Mussolini failed to invade Greece successfully, and Greece was being helped by the British at the time. And so Hitler didn't like that. So Hitler's southern flank was open to British air bases from Greece. So he did not want to be, a sitting duck. So to secure his Balkan flank, Hitler seized both Greece and Yugoslavia in April. So, being 2 months from that final victory, Hitler will invade the Soviet Union in June 1941, betraying the Nazi-Soviet pact signed in 1939. He believed the Soviets could still be decisively defeated before the brutal winter set in. Their massive attack will stretch out along some 1,800 miles. German troops advanced rapidly, capturing 2 million Soviet soldiers along the way. By November, one German army group swept through the Ukraine, and a second army began besieging the city of Leningrad, while a third approached within 25 miles of Moscow. Wow. That sounds like a lot. And it is. It is. 1,800 miles long, and they weren't being stopped. In early winter, and fierce Soviet resistance halted the German advances for a time. Being certain of the quick victory, Germany had not planned for winter uniforms, and for the first time in the war, the Germans had been stopped. Britain and the Soviet Union forced Iran to allow them to create an overland supply route in that country after a brief invasion. Iran's king was deposed, and this route became critical for the Soviet war effort. Counterattack from the Soviets came in December 1941 as an ominous ending of the year for the Germans. Oh, it's not even called it. Can I edit? I'm gonna edit. Called Operation Barbarossa. Yeah, you're gonna need to know that. So, Operation Barbarossa, Operation Sea Lion, all these operations. So you might be thinking, why that? That's Captain Barboza, not Barbarossa. Operation Barbarossa, and this is the 18th. So they went to Leningrad, 25 miles of Moscow, and Stalingrad is over here somewhere. Here are the Germans in their uniforms. This kind of looks like they're from Star Wars, fighting in the snow. That is the Shah Reza Pahlavi from Iran, a young looking one. And this is them invading Iran, Soviet Union right here. All right, infamous. So Japan took advantage of Hitler's conquest in Western Europe to seize European colonies in Asia. However, Japan realized the American power in the Pacific could block further conquest, which will lead, as we talked about last lecture, as you guys wrote a lot, right? Led to the Japanese to attack the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, Oahu, December 7, 1941, where Mr. Ovalle is going for spring break. The surprise attack destroyed more than 350 aircraft, damaged or sunk 18 ships, and killed or wounded more than 3,500 Americans. Never has that ever happened. Our president gave the infamous speech, December 7th, 1941, which will a date that will live in infamy, or a date which will live in infamy, something like that. Very powerful speech. The same day, the Japanese actually attacked the Philippines and advanced on Malaya. Later, they invaded the Dutch East Indies and occupied several islands in the Pacific Ocean. So they took over places that European countries had for colonies, and obviously the Americans too. Philippines was ours. So naturally, that's going to bring everyone into the fold. By spring of 1942, almost all of Southeast Asia and much of the Western Pacific Islands fell to the Japanese. A triumphant Japan had declared a creation of a community of nations, the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, under the direction of Japan. Japan announced its intention to liberate areas of Southeast Asia under Western colonial rule. However, Japan still needed resources from the region for its war machine and treated the countries under its rule as conquered lands. So they only traded, European, American overlords for Japanese overlords. And here are some pictures of that. This is the USS Arizona, sunk. This almost looks like a fake picture of fireworks, but that is not true. They even damaged planes. If you've seen the movie Pearl Harbor, I'm going to go visit there soon. Catch me outside. How about that? Here's a picture of Pearl Harbor. All our boat, well, not all our fleet, but most of our fleet was anchored. So, stuck to the ground, basically, weighed down to the ground. And it is a shallow harbor. So there you go. And then here's Japanese extent. Obviously, we talked about this stuff in the last lecture, and all the purple stuff is what they attack in 1941. All that stuff. And here it is, if you could see the Japanese Empire, all of it. They thought Japanese policy was now largely dictated by Prime Minister Hideki Tojo, former general who came through the time of the war as a military dictator. Tojo hoped Japan's lightning strikes at American bases would destroy the U.S. fleet in the Pacific. He thought FDR and his administration would accept Japanese domination in the Pacific. Yeah, right. But the Japanese miscalculated. The attack on Pearl Harbor unified American opinion about getting involved in the war. You don't attack us, we will fight back. The U.S. joined with European nations and nationalist China in a combined effort to defeat Japan. Believing American involvement in the Pacific would make the U.S. ineffective in fighting in the European theater, Hitler declared war on the U.S. 4 days after Pearl Harbor, as in World War I. Yet another European conflict turned into global warfare. That's Hideki Tojo. You've seen his picture. Foes to friends. So the U.S. entry of the war created a new coalition, the Grand Alliance, to overcome mutual suspicions of the three major alliance allies. Great Britain, the U.S., and Soviet Union agreed to stress military operations and ignore political differences. Communism, capitalism, communism, democracy don't work. At the beginning of 1943, the Allies agreed to fight until the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, surrendered unconditionally, which required the Axis nations to surrender without any favorable condition. This cemented the Grand Alliance by making it nearly impossible for Hitler to divide its foes. There's the big three: Churchill, FDR, Stalin. European theater. So in spite of some minor setbacks, defeat was far from Hitler's mind at the beginning of 1942. As Japanese forces advanced to Southeast Asia and Pacific, Hitler and his allies continued to fight the war in Europe against Britain and the Soviet Union. Till late 1942, it seemed as if the Germans might still find victory. In North Africa, the Germans broke through the British defense in Egypt and advanced toward the strategically important port city of Alexandria. The Suez Canal, so important to the Allied warfare, was under threat of capture. A renewed German offensive in the Soviet Union led to the capture of the entire Crimea in the spring of 1942. However, by the fall, the war turned against the Germans. There's some destruction. European theater. Tide turned. A lot of questions come from this slide. Well, the first one and the second one are definitely test questions. North Africa, British forces stopped General Erwin Rommel's troops. The Battle of El Alamein, summer 1942. Germans had to then retreat back across the desert. In November 1942, British and American forces invaded French North Africa. So basically, the British kicked them out of Egypt from the east, and then the Americans and British are attacking from the west, and they are basically attacking them on both sides. So German and Italian troops will surrender May 1943. The Eastern Front, that's the Soviet Union side, following the capture of Crimea, Hitler's generals wanted him to concentrate on the Caucasus Mountains and its oil fields. Hitler decided, however, that Stalingrad, named chiefly after its leader, Stalin, the major industrial center on the Volga River, should be taken first. And perhaps one of the most terrible and brutal battles of the war, between November 9th and 1942 to February 2nd, 1943, the Soviets will launch a counterattack at Stalingrad. They were being sieged, cut off from supplies through a winter. And so Germany was besieging the city, and the Soviet Union had to rally for support. And boy, did they get some support. German troops were stopped and encircled, and supply lines were cut off, all in the frigid winter conditions. The German Sixth Army, considered the best of the all-German army, they were forced to surrender at Stalingrad. Hitler was not happy. By February, German forces in the Soviet Union were back to their positions in June 1942, and by the spring, even Hitler knew that the Germans would not defeat the Soviet Union. Too many people. This is General Bernard Monty Montgomery, and this is General Erwin Rommel. This is the Battle of El Alamein, a map. And so this is Egypt, BT dubs, El Alamein. And they're going to force them to go back across the desert this way, this way. Here they are in the desert. That's General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Here's some pictures in the desert. And then you have El Alamein. That's the first battle of El Alamein. And then the second battle, they're going to move them back. So the second battle, they move them back, and Americans land in Morocco and Algeria, and they're going to fight at Tunis, Algiers, Oran, and Tripoli. And this is where I think the final battle happens. See, there you go. I know things. Maps help everything, especially in a world war. So here they surrendering. This is the invasion of Stalingrad. Stalingrad's over here. This is Crimea, by the way. This is Crimea, and Hitler's generals wanted him to go this way. Instead, Hitler said, "No, I'm going to attack the city named after Stalin." Again, fighting in the snow, destruction of Stalingrad, more destruction of Stalingrad, and the Germans surrendering. Because when you get supplies cut off to you, and you run out of bullets, it's not like they're zombies. More surrender. Hitler not happy. All right, run this fade. Is this the last slide? Well, besides pictures. Yeah, I think so. All right, 1942, the tide of the battle in the East also changed dramatically. In the East, in the West, Jesus, Mr. Ovalle. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. 1942, the tide of battle in the West also changed dramatically. The Battle of the Coral Sea, May 7th and 8th. Primarily fight all in the air, dogfights only. American naval forces stopped the Japanese advance and saved Australia from being invaded. It wasn't a victory. It wasn't a defeat. It just prevented Australia from being captured. Because if Australia was captured, a whole hell of a lot of messy mess would have happened. For layman's terms. The turning point of the war, test question, final question. Turning point of the war in Asia came on June 4th at the Battle of Midway Island, where U.S. planes destroyed the 4 attacking Japanese aircraft carriers in a counterattack. So we knew we had decoders, primarily Native Americans, who decoded Japanese transmissions of where the next attack would be. And we knew it was going to happen at Midway. So we set up, and they attacked the island, launching from the aircraft carriers. And then they come, attack the island, and they go back to refuel, re-up, resupply. And while they're doing that, American planes launch a counterattack and catch the Japanese with their pants down around their ankles. And they were able to sink 3, damaged a 4th, and over time, the aircraft carrier will sink. So aircraft carriers are like big little cities, and they cost a lot to make. And especially when the U.S. is now cutting off supplies to Japan because of what happened, right? Duh. Japan has to somehow fight a war, but also build more aircraft carriers. It's a tough ask. It's a tough ask, and that is why it's a turning point in the war. The U.S. defeated the Japanese Navy and established naval superiority in the Pacific. During World War II, soldiers throughout the world relied on military technology that they had not had in World War I. They increased their use of tanks, airplanes, submarines, which caused massive destructions on both civilian and military populations. In the fall of 1942, Allied forces in Asia were gathering for two operations. One, commanded by U.S. General Douglas MacArthur, who was forced out of the Philippines, and he returneth. Moved into the Philippines through New Guinea and the South Pacific Islands. The other would move across the Pacific with a combination of U.S. Army, Navy, and Marine attacks on Japanese-held islands. This strategy was called island hopping. Test question, which begun in an effort to capture some Japanese-held islands while bypassing others in an effort to more easily reach the islands of Japan. This policy began to become fruitful in its early use after engagements near the Solomon Islands that lasted from August to November 1942, and Japanese fortunes began to fade away like an MJ shot. Battle of the Coral Sea map, again, primarily fought all in the air. Not a succinct victory, but there you go. Look at it. If you read it, Port Moresby remains in Allied control. Papua New Guinea. Shokaku and Zukaku cannot recover in time to fight the Battle of Midway, reducing Japanese carrier strength by a third. The Southwest Pacific Front had been stabilized, and the U.S. Navy sees its first strategic victory at sea against the Imperial Japanese Navy. All this stuff is flak. It's like debris in the air. If that debris gets sucked in by the airplane's propellers, plane go boom. Here's the Battle of Midway. Maps. This is an aerial footage. I like it. This movie came out in 2019. Highly suggest it. That's Douglas MacArthur. And this is island hopping. Philippines, Battle of Leyte Gulf. Leyte. I learned some Tagalog back in the day, how to pronounce it. And this is island hopping on the map. So you got one going this way, and you got the other going this way, all through trying to get to Japan. And boom, bada bing, bada boom. And that was a long lecture. I know it's long. It's a lot of information. Like some of the stuff that wasn't, we didn't even talk about the Bataan Death March. We didn't, I mean, some things that I learned were missing from your textbook. And it's, I wouldn't say it's frustrating, but some things just are glossed over more now than they used to be. So it is what it is. All right. Hopefully you guys did enjoy that. Your homework is page 453, questions 2 through 4. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I know another long lecture, but hey, 10 slides. Was it 10 total slides of writing? No, 10 slides, 8 slides of writing. So it is what it is. So yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.